Welcome to Better Man. This channel is all about helping young men along the roads of their self-improvement journeys. Thank you so much to all the new subscribers and people engaging with the content. I'm super excited to build this channel, so I really appreciate it. I'm back in Southern California right now, relaxing in a park on a work break, and I thought I'd start a new series. So I've been making more of an effort to read and listen to audiobooks. So I want to start a series where I bring you different books I've read, and I bring the 3 top takeaways from that book that I think are the most applicable, that will really have some immediate benefits to all of your lives if you apply. So today's book is going to be a little more about finances and that financial sector. Today's book is going to be Rich Dad, Poor Dad, written by Robert Kiyosaki. Now, for any of you who have been looking at financial books to read, you're going to see this one again and again. This is one of the most famous books in the space. It was written back in 1997, and there have been so many highly successful people who, when I'm seeing interviews of them or reading lists, Rich Dad, Poor Dad is always on the list of a must-read. So I listened to the audiobook twice, and I went ahead and I wrote down my 3 top takeaways. Now, Robert Kiyosaki is an interesting figure because he grew up in Hawaii. And when he was growing up, he talks about how he had 2 dads, essentially, right? So he had his biological dad, who was his poor dad. Now, this man was highly educated. He had a doctorate degree from an Ivy League university, and he was very intelligent. However, what Robert noticed is that he wasn't very financially successful. Then, as he was growing up, he started to notice his friend Mike's father, who only had an 8th grade education. But in spite of that, was still extremely financially successful, one of the most successful people in the town where he was from. This whole book is about the dichotomy between those 2 fathers and the lessons he learned. So my first top takeaway from this book is going to be work to learn, don't work for money. Something they mention again and again in this book is that you don't want to work for someone else and simply let them gain the lion's share of the profit if you want to be ultra successful, right? If you truly want to be successful, you need to create something of your own. You can't be constantly trading your money for time and ultimately benefiting other people. So an example of this would be most people, they clock in, they work for someone, they go home, they get a salary, or maybe they're paid hourly, and maybe they make an okay living, but really the person who's profiting the most is the person who owns that business, right? So more often than not, they were able to become successful at that level because they worked in many different areas to acquire skills. So maybe they learned how to do a specific skill. Like, for instance, myself, I'm a personal trainer. And right now as a personal trainer, I'm making a good living. I enjoy what I'm doing. And, technically I'm in a good space because I'm self-employed. So I'm really not working for others. But what I'm still doing is I'm trading my time for money, right? If I don't do a session, I don't get paid. So that's where the limitation is for me. In acquiring skills, what I'm going to be able to do is down the line, maybe I'll be able to acquire a skill about how to market myself online, and then I can sell digital products. And then that will separate me from having to physically be somewhere all the time, and I'll be able to create wealth in a more autonomous fashion. Another example could be maybe I learned how to manage people really well and I learned marketing, and I can pair those 2 skills together to hire people so that I can generate some income even when I'm not working all the time. But really that's the main takeaway from the first point is you want to work to learn, and all the time that you're learning, you want to be stacking these skills so that you can apply them to something that will have direct financial impact on yourself, right? So if you're just acquiring skills, like, cool, but have intention with it. Think, okay, if I learn how to become a really good salesman, okay, well, I can sell my services. Great, I need to do that. What would pair well with being a good salesman? Well, I guess I actually need to have a skill to sell. So let me learn a specific skill. Okay, I've learned a specific skill of personal training. Well, how can I make myself more desired in the field? Well, I can have a specific niche. Maybe I'll learn all about how to strengthen someone and heal someone's knee pain. You want to have intention, and in the beginning when you're learning a skill, it might just be more you're just learning it to learn it. But down the line, once you've perfected one thing, you want to have intention in the other skills that you began stacking with the initial one. Point number 2 is going to be learn the differences between assets and liabilities, or avoid the rat race. Now, this is something he talks extensively about in the book. Most people just don't understand this simple concept, and because of this, they set themselves up in financial situations where they essentially are forced to work for a wage for the rest of their life just to subsist and get by. He explains an asset as something that's actually actively wealth generating, and you can think of that as something like stocks, bonds, real estate that generates income, anything like that. And on the other side, a liability is something like maybe an auto loan, right? You can think maybe of a car as an asset, but really it's not. It's a liability. It's something that you're going to owe a payment on. It's depreciating once you buy it. It's not making you any more money directly. Once we understand, the difference between assets and liabilities, we can really get our mindset in the frame of, I need to acquire more assets and I need to be careful to minimize my accrual of liabilities. It's going to set us up for future success, because if we're focused on, I want to get into real estate, that's an asset. So then you can focus your efforts there, all the while being sure not to go into debt for needless things like a cool car or a nice computer that you don't really need, right? We need to stay focused, and when we have the awareness that these things aren't going to bring us, they're just not going to be productive for us, we can avoid those. The reason we want to avoid this at all costs is because Kiyosaki talks a lot about how the people who are the most successful are the bold people who are able to take risks. Now, a great time to take risks is right now, when you're young, when you don't have a lot of responsibilities holding you down. You don't have a wife, you don't have a mortgage, you don't have kids to support, right? But the more we let these things happen, we buy a house and we want to keep our house, so we have to make the certain amount every month. You're going to become more and more security focused, more dependent on that. And it's going to be highly unlikely that you're going to be willing to risk those things and take these chances on things that have a really big payoff but aren't guaranteed. But everybody who is highly successful has taken those chances. So don't put yourself in a situation where and I know like so many guys, young guys, they get their first job and they want to get a sick car, they want to get a Camaro or like a big lifted truck, and it's cool, but now they're like $20,000 in debt and they have that much on the liability column. They haven't done anything about the assets. They could have saved that money. They have $20,000 here now, close to putting a down payment down on a real house, and that can be rented out and generate income. So it's important to have your mind in the right place with all that. Too many people get into needless debt. Now, number 3, and this was something I really resonated a lot. Point number 3 is learn to sell. Being a good salesman is going to help you in literally every area in life. If you're trying to pick up a girl, you're selling yourself to her. If you're trying to sell a service, you're selling yourself to them. And so why should they get the service from you? What do you have that's unique and individual, and why should you be the one to give them that service? If you're a waiter in a restaurant, right? Like, you're constantly selling yourself to your customers, you're selling them products. So sales applies to literally every area in life. A lot of people see sales as something that's kind of sleazy or beneath them, and that is a terrible way of thinking. So Kiyosaki has this great anecdote where he talks about how, he's being interviewed by this writer, and, he's a best-selling author, so she's interviewing him about his work. And at the end, they start talking a little bit, and he finds out that she has a book she really wants to publish, and she just hasn't been able to sell it at all. Maybe she already published it, I forget, but she just hasn't been able to sell it. And he tells her, you should learn sales. And she becomes offended. She's like, I have a master's degree in English literature, or you're telling me to learn sales? I'm above that, essentially. And he looks at her and he says, I'm a best-selling author. You're a best writing author. If you learn how to sell, you can become a best writing author and a best-selling author. So essentially what he pointed out there was, she had the skills of writing. Who was going to read her book unless they were sold on reading it? So she needed to find ways to get it out there, to publicize it. And that is going to be by implementing the skill of sales. So even myself in personal training, like, I came into the game thinking, I'm a good trainer. People will want to train with me. But it's not true. It's like, well, where are your transformations? Who have you worked with before? Can you convince me that you're going to be able to get me the results? And I quickly learned that, oh, I actually have to learn to sell first. Once I sell them, I can utilize the skill set I have to train them and improve their bodies. But I'm not going to get to utilize that skill set unless I sell them in the first place. And that's one thing that's made me successful in my field is I'm good at sales. I know a lot of good trainers out there who they aren't good at sales, or they put way more time into improving their knowledge than their marketing and their sales. And it's great to improve their knowledge. I do so as well. But if that's all you're focused on, you're not going to be successful because you're not able to use that knowledge on anyone because nobody wants to work with you. So you're not above selling. Learn how to sell. So again, those were the 3 tips. Number 1 is work to learn. Don't work for money. And the last thing I'll say about that is he talks about how you need to own the system. So again, if you're working for someone else, the ceiling is going to be low. You're never going to be able to achieve that high. You need to own a business, own the systems if you really want to be successful. To do that, that's going to take risk. So that goes again into point number 2. Don't get caught up in that rat race. If you have all of these things, all these financial responsibilities holding you down, you're never going to be able to take these big risks that have the big payoffs. And finally, number 3 again, you must learn to sell. Don't rationalize why you shouldn't do it. If you learn to sell, it's going to improve your life in every single way. Couple bonus tips I would say. Listen and read this multiple times. If you just go through it one time, you're not really going to absorb everything. I found that to be the case with myself. A lot of people read books and then they just immediately forget what they've read. So read through it, 2 or 3 times. And then secondly, actively implement some steps as soon as possible. So if you read something and you're like, that's great, that's a really great concept. If you don't implement it, it's probably just going to drift away and never impact your life. So the whole point of listening to videos like this or reading books like Rich Dad Poor Dad is we want to gain knowledge that we can implement to impact our lives in a positive way. Make sure you implement all this knowledge. Lastly, guys, please give this video a like, comment, and subscribe. I'm really trying to grow this channel so I can help more people like you, and I'm really excited about the process. And please, if you have any specific videos that you want to see from me, whether it's fitness related, financial related, general self-improvement habits, please leave a comment, let me know. I would love to make that video as soon as possible. So without further ado, I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.